happy to be here. Excited to make Gelli Plate Printing. I am going to answer, this is a good question. Are there any inks or paints that can damage the plate? So as far as paints go that are not safe to use, don't use oil paint. Anything water-based is going to be your safest, but I do use alcohol inks on my Gelli Plate. So I don't put anything underneath it because I have this big fake wood piece here, and that holds it in place. If you put it on top of paper, instead tape your paper down, because when you're working on the Gelli Plate, it tends to move around and shift if it doesn't have a surface it can stick to. So it's like about a ½ inch thick or about a centimeter thick, and it's squishy and rubbery, and it just lasts a long time. Mine's clean at the moment. I don't always clean it, but if you are going to clean it, I want to tell you the easiest way. Just buy yourself a big bag of baby wipes. I'm going to have some on hand in case I do decide to clean it. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. So if you have any more questions, please let me know. So these run, I think, between $20 and $30 for a typical plate. And then you need a brayer. So this is a brayer here. It's like just a spinny thing on a handle. They're easy to find. They're the ones I like are by Speedball. I have a bunch of them. I don't clean my brayers in between use. They just build up and eventually you can peel that off. But I don't clean those brayers because that's too much work. Just expect your first few prints to not work at all because Gelli Plate's still getting comfortable with the paint on it. And then I'm going to tell you I have this huge drawers full of stuff, but stencils, collect stencils, anything that can make marks, texture. I think this is from a cross stitch thing. There's bubble wrap in here. You can find stencils on Amazon, or you could go to Stencil Girl. I know Tim Holtz makes great stencils. And then you need paint. You can buy cheap paint to do this. I love expensive paint when I'm painting on my surfaces, on my canvases, but I do use cheaper paint sometimes for the Gelli Plate. But I use my golden fluids. They tend to seem to work the best for me, but some people use heavy body. Some use open. Open means that it'll stay wet longer if you're trying to make a more intricate design. I like mine to dry fast. When I'm doing Gelli Plate printing, I'm not mixing as much. I wanted to show you what happens when we use different color combinations together. That's the main purpose of today, is understanding how the color works on the Gelli Plates. This is going to give you a really good idea of how color plays together. Some of these combinations are going to look good and some are not going to look good. And when you start learning and playing with the Gelli Plate, you're going to kind of start memorizing that. And once you start seeing how colors work, it makes it a lot easier to do the Gelli Plate. But in the end, there's really no wrong answer because working on the Gelli Plate is meant to be fun. I am going to start by just putting a little bit of a color. I'm going to go for a bright one to start. I haven't used this Pyrrole Orange in a long time. It is very saturated bright orange. It's a really fun color to use. Great for mixing. I'm not going to put too much. Some artists put a lot on and let it be a real thick texture, and some put a thinner amount on, and I like mine thinner because I like to work in layers and I love transparency. Transparency is going to happen depending on the type of paint you're using, but also how thick or thin your layers are going to be. And this one's kind of pulling up because it's been a while since I've used this plate at all. You can make it really easy and just give yourself some texture. So I'm going to just put some texture in it so you can see kind of what happens. Oh look, and it's even going to leave the paint behind. Even more fun. I always keep paper by my side here, just cheap paper that I can use. Deli paper, you can use artist grade tissue paper, you can use deli paper. I like bright white copy paper, which is pretty cheap. You can buy a huge pack of it. And if I'm trying to make a more formal piece of art, sometimes I'll get a little bit heavier paper, but that's trickier to use and you need a lot of practice if you're going to get to that point. So it's very warm today, so that's pulling up. Very little paint. It dried so fast. So what I like to do is just let this layer dry a little bit and add the next layer on top, and that's when we start getting interesting effects. But what I want to show you is complementary colors. What happens if I choose to do my next layer in like a yellow? I'm going to do that on one side, and on this side I'm going to go ahead and put blue. Which do you think is going to turn out right? And just so that it shows better, I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I've got two brayers, so I don't have to mix the colors and you'll be able to see. And then I'm going to go ahead and put this blue across here. And then I want you to be able to see for yourself what's going to happen as we start mixing. our layers. Hopefully it didn't dry too fast this time. Now it's pulling off. Okay, this is a perfect example. It worked just how I wanted. Good thing. So layering the orange and the yellow, we have a beautiful variation. You can see very clearly all those different colors and shades. Because they're in the same family, they're right next to each other on the color wheel. When I do orange and blue, they are complementary. They're opposite on the color wheel. So we have this very dark and almost muddied look. Now, for someone who wants a grunge look, if you're trying to replicate something that might be in the city, I think this is still gorgeous. But it's about knowing what's going to happen when you put those colors next to each other. Knowing that orange and blue is going to make a dark, muddier color, muted. There's beauty in both of them. It's about knowing what's going to happen when you do it. So let's place some more. I still have some orange on here. We're just going to see what happens if we leave that. And I have a little bit of color left on the brayer, so I just roll it on the side. You probably can't see it too much. All right, because we're working on color and I want you to be able to see color clearly, I decided to go ahead and clean off the Gelli plate. I usually love to just leave it and let those colors build, but I'm doing this as a color lesson. I just use baby wipes like I said before. All right, now our next layer. Let's see the difference when we go for green. This is a green gold, so it's a little on the yellow side. I love this color. It's a little bit pricey by Golden, but you could probably buy a more affordable color. If you're learning to paint on canvas and you want to paint really nice paintings, I still really recommend more expensive paint because it just works better. But when you're doing the Gelli plate, it really can hold up to a lot of different types. All right, so I just want to be able to show you how to use a stencil. I'm going to put one here and one here, and that just gives it a little bit of texture. And I can come back in with the paper that I've already used, because I like to build up those layers. And we're going to pull up some of that color. So I'm using green, a green gold, so a yellow green. And then I want to see what happens. See, look at that. So the green and the orange, they're not quite opposite, but because there's such a little bit amount and the green is a little bit yellower, that's making some really pretty colors next to each other. Now I'm going to take this off, and I want it to dry just a little because I like letting it dry. It doesn't take long when it's warm out. If it's wet or cold or humid, it'll take a little bit longer. But I like to let that layer dry because that's how I can pull up a print without it blending with the next layer of color. So let's do another color test where opposite of green, I'm going to go ahead and put down the quinacridone magenta because that's a little more opposite than red right now for where it is on the color wheel, which I could pull out and show you. Hey, I'm going to do that. Opposite of regular green is more of a red, bright magenta or red. And this lighter green, we can go with a more magenta color. So I'm showing you what the complementary will do. I'm going to put a couple drops over here of complementary, and then let's go with teal. Teal's very close to this, just turquoise with white in it, so it's very close to green, so it's going to be more of an analogous color. And we're going to see how these two show up. All right, so I've got that one going there, and then this one here, and then I'm going to pull up another piece of Gelli paper. I like using the Gelli paper because it's pretty sturdy. You can buy it on Amazon easily. In fact, there's probably still a link in my profile that you can see all my favorite supplies on Amazon on my Amazon page. But you can also use artist grade tissue paper if you want this really nice thin paper. Also, I love to use copy paper. Here's the green. It's kind of just blending in, and that dark color, and it's making it a little bit more orange because it was a yellowish green. I still think that's pretty, but it's not showing up very much. Now you can see here, you can see the complement, it's working. Not the complement, the analogous color, it's working a little bit better. And then look at how interesting this overlap. All those colors together, kind of hints of brown and purple. This is a good way for you to figure out how color works. So let's do it one more time, and then we'll play and I'll answer a few more questions. Next color, let's just go ahead and have some fun with the quinacridone magenta. I love quinacridone magenta. All right, See how I can just roll off the paint there, and eventually I'm going to build so many layers that I'll have some interesting grungy paper and I'll still want to use it in my art. That's just how I do it. And then let's see, another something for texture. So I have these foam plates. They're kind of hard to find, but sometimes you can find them on Amazon. They're like to make crafts with, but I just use them to put texture on my Gelli plate. I've got a polka dot one there and a striped one. It's just nice to put a little texture so you guys can see what's happening. You could even take a rubber tool and draw in it. And I'm letting that dry anyway. This is just so that you can see the differentiations between the different colors when we go to print them. Okay, so that's drying really fast. So we have a comment here that says, in the UK, wet strength tissue by Carnival is fantastic for Gelli plate printing. That's really good to know. In fact, I need to memorize that because I get questions all the time from people in different countries. What's the equivalent of the deli paper? Parchment paper for cooking isn't quite the same. Deli paper is what is used, you know, like when you go to the deli counter and they wrap up your meat or they wrap up a sandwich or something. An equivalent of that, maybe, that's why I keep saying the artist grade tissue paper is going to be the best. So in the UK, which means that probably in most of Europe, you'd be able to find it. Wet strength tissue by Carnival. I'm assuming that means that if it gets wet, it's not going to quickly tear, because if you ever use tissue paper that was meant for wrapping presents, it's just going to crumble into bits. All right, so let's pick some fun. I'm going to go back to the yellow. It's a really gorgeous combination, I think, to do yellow and quinacridone magenta. You will get orange, and I think some of that's blending a little bit, but that's okay. And then what happens if I use really opposite? Phthalo green is pretty opposite. I mean, I have a bright Kelly green. A bit of art with you. Just Christmas green. I'm not going to get that one out, but this will do. These are all transparent colors. I might make it purple, actually, now that I think of it. I'm going to let it overlap so we can even see what happens there. I want you to experiment. If you have a Gelli plate, even if you don't have a Gelli plate, you can just start layering colors like that with a brayer or a brush until you see what happens when you layer, what's going to happen to your colors and how they react to each other. That's a good way to understand color theory, because there's really no getting around the results. There you go. There's a whole bunch of information you can take away from that. Those look really nice together. That green had so much blue undertone that it turned it mostly purple, but it also turned it really dark, and everything in the middle was quite brown. No big deal. But look, accidentally, I got these really weird lines right here, and I love that. I can just imagine taking that piece out and putting it in one of my landscape paintings. No, it's not pouring paint. Pouring paint is for a completely different art project. I've never used pouring paint on a plate before. I use fluid paint by Golden, but Liquitex makes soft body, and then you can also buy like the cheaper brands. Let me see if I have one on me. Blick, Artist's Loft, Liquitex Basics are all student grade, but they still work pretty good on the Gelli plate. So I would say that in this case, you don't have to use your expensive paint. I still just love the saturation of the Golden, so I keep using it. Now I want to show you what happens if we use an opaque color. Opaque meaning you can't really see through it. And I'm going to put a little bit of that here. And I just want to pull up. See, you can see all that color that's still there. And you can pull that up by just putting a layer of paint on here. And see what happens. All right, so if you've never done the Gelli plate before, what you got to know is that you can get super crazy creative. Oh, I love how that looks. Look at that. The largest Gelli plate I do have like an 11 by 16 or whatever, or 12 by 16. I have a larger one. There we go. Now we're pulling it all up. Look at that grunge. If you wanted to do like urban downtown Baltimore, I can see this with a little bit of graffiti, like handwritten graffiti on it. That's why I love to do these Gelli plates. There's just so many possibilities that you can also go a little bit more organic organic. I want to show you my favorite color combination before I finish. You don't have to buy golden in order to do this. And by the way, that Matisse paint in Australia is fantastic. You can use Matisse paint. You do not have to buy the expensive paint to do this, nor to make any art. I just prefer it because I feel like I get better results and the paint goes farther because it's got more pigment and better binder. All right, I'm using my two favorite colors. They are opposites. Teal and quinacridone nickel azo gold. They're going to be basically opposites on, almost opposites. Because this is the nickel azo gold realm. It would be in this kind of realm of orangish. And teal is a light version of turquoise. So it's almost quite opposite. And I want to show you how beautiful these colors are when you use them together. So there's your teal. And then I'm going to go ahead and mix the nickel azo gold. And then I'm going to let them blend right across here. Oh, I see why I was getting those lines. This one I'm pushing a little too hard into. Well, why not? Doesn't matter. I want to show you how pretty this can be. But let's put just a little bit across the top here. I'll leave it on the bottom. This way we're kind of creating our own little mini landscape, right? And it always reminds me of kind of like a southwestern color combination. Look at how pretty. Look at that. So that blue blending in with the yellowish orange makes this gorgeous green, and it's still picking up a little hints of the quinacridone magenta that was underneath it. That's why you don't clean your Gelli plate, because then you'd be missing all of this fun stuff. You like that? What do you think? It's pretty fun. So then your question is, what the heck do I do with those? Well, there's a couple of great ideas in the course, in the Virtual Art Summit. And I use mine for collage. I'm going to do one more print for you, and then I'll probably be calling it a day. Let's see. What color? All right, let's do a little bit of Prussian blue. Here's another favorite color combination. We'll do some Prussian blue. And that's going to look really pretty on here. And I'm going to go ahead and take some of this color off. And I want to show you that when I do, I'm going to get some new stencils. Let's get something more organic this time. Look at that. How fun is that stencil? I have so many. I have a lot that I haven't even opened up yet. Oh, look, you can even get florals. Here's some more organic. Let's see if this one will work. All right, so I'm just putting that down to just get some. And all I'm doing is pulling up that paint. You can almost see it soak through on this back side here. And I'm pushing in with my fingers. You could probably get a press to get all of that, but I'm not. Now that's one more layer. Look at how many textures and whatnot. The organic stencils, oh, I don't remember. These ones were, there's so much paint on it, I can't remember. That was probably, I don't know. I may have some of these in my cart on Amazon. This one I know for sure was Tim Holtz. Tim Holtz has a bunch of organic ones. Now look at how pretty this is, layering up. I'm letting it dry, and I'm going to give you a color that is opposite of the color wheel. Almost, not quite, well maybe a little bit over, but all right, so we just did a color kind of in this range, a really dark blue, and opposite is yellow. So it is going to be an opposite, but I want you to see how gorgeous it is when we use gold, which is a yellow tone. As this is drying, we want it to dry. See, it's not dry. I want to just, so there's just a little blue. I'm pulling up a little bit on the edges here. All right, so it's starting to dry, and I've pulled up some of that. Just fun little textures. Don't let anything go to waste. Now, I'm going to put some gold on and roll that out. It's pretty magical. I can imagine doing this and then with the final results drawing like a nice galaxy picture, maybe your zodiac sign. Alright, so let's pull this up. You can definitely use Gelli Plate prints as the base for more artwork. Alright, I'm hoping, because I'm on camera, that this is gonna turn out And the only way you're going to know which colors to use is to just keep playing. Look at that. Pretty gorgeous. You can take a block of that. And each piece can be cut up and used however you wish. All right, let's review these one more time. Guys, they dry so fast, by the way, so you really don't have to, like, some people get drying racks. I'm not like that. All right, so one of the first ones we did, we tested analogous colors and complementary colors. And well, it was one of the first. Here we go. Here's another one. So, hint, hint, sometimes the analogous look a little bit. So these ones aren't as pretty, but it teaches you a lot about color, right? And then this was layers, just layers of pulling up the stencil. And if you keep going, you just end up with really pretty patterned paper that you can use. This really pretty one where we were doing the blues. But look at how pretty it looks together even. I've used nature. Here's a really cool stack. I've drawn on it before I do it. I use nature fresh leaves. You can do music sheets. I'm going to remind you one more time of my very favorite color combination. That's quinacridone gold, nickel azo gold, and teal. And then they make all these gorgeous variations. And then we have the dark blue. I used Prussian blue. Payne's gray would have worked as well. And then gold. So, all right. Thank you, everybody. Bye.